Diplomat Alex Saab returned to Venezuela after being unjustly detained for more than 1,286 days by U.S. authorities. Palestinian resistance movement Hamas confirmed that a delegation headed by the leader of the political committee, Ismail Haniyeh, is in Cairo, the capital of Egypt, for ceasefire talks. The French National Assembly approved a restrictive immigration law unleashing a political crisis in the government of President Emmanuel Macron. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Diplomat Alex Saab returned to Venezuela after being detained for more than 1,286 days by U.S. authorities. Saab arrived at Maiquetía International Airport, where he was received by his family and top Venezuelan officials. Alex Saab was detained by the government of the United States since 2021 after being held a year earlier in Cape Verde while on his way to a humanitarian operation and having suffered degrading and inhumane treatment, violating his human rights and diplomatic immunity. Previously, the Venezuelan government expressed through a statement that his freedom is another victory of the Bolivarian diplomacy of peace in the face of interfering actions of the United States. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro received diplomat Alex Saab on Wednesday at the Miraflores Palace, hours after being released in the United States, where he had been in jail under charges of alleged conspiracy to money laundering. The president thanked those who led the process of Saab's release and rescue in conditions of integrity and reiterated that the diplomat was unjustly kidnapped in Cape Verde for his only crime of trying to go around the criminal blockade imposed by the U.S. on Venezuela and look for medicines in times of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Venezuelan president also thanked the solidarity movement Free Alex Saab, which was made up of people from various nations, including Venezuela and the United States, and highlighted Saab's resistance and courage during his more than 3 years of unjust incarceration.
Proud patriots who resisted 1,280 days, 14 months. The conditions most adverse, most painful of kidnapping, incarceration, torture, physical torture, psychological torture, threats, lies, and later of 1,280 days his triumph. The truth has won. Justice has won.
President Nicolas Maduro also condemned the fact that the evidence presented by the government of Venezuela is not valid in Miami or Bogota.
How he had to face lies. Not even one of the proofs that were given from Miami and Bogota were true. The only true of a brave man, of an entrepreneur, nationalized in Venezuela, whose only fault was to seek to overcome the sanctions, the criminal sanctions against Venezuela, to look for medicines during the pandemic. He was captured then and kidnapped.
Diplomat Alex Saab dedicated a few words of thanks to the people of Venezuela, its president and his family for not giving up and not leaving him behind.
Thank you, Venezuelan people. I feel proud to serve the Venezuelan people and serve this government, a loyal government that don't left anyone behind. A government that never gives up like me, and a people that will never give up. Thank you, Mr. President.
Let's now go deeper on the analysis of today's Paramount Day. We welcome Dan Sha, Professor of Latin American and Caribbean Studies at the City University of New York. Welcome, Danny. Danny, can you hear us? It seems we're having difficulties to establish contact with Professor Dan Sha to analyze deeper on the importance of today, what happened, the return to the homeland of Alex Saab to Venezuela. Let's continue with other news, and we'll try later to make contact with Professor Dan Sha. We continue in the U.S. A court in that North American nation sentenced former Haitian Senator Joseph Joel John to life imprisonment for the assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse in July 2021. Joel John, before the judge of the Miami court, asked for clemency after recognizing his implication in the facts, but clarified that his intention was to kidnap the president and bring him to justice. However, he declared that his accomplices decided to assassinate him, and he could not refuse because he feared for his life. The condemned man conspired, planned, and financed part of the operation and became, together with the Chilean Haitian businessman Rodolphe Yarjar and the former Colombian Army officer Germán Rivera, the third person convicted in the United States for the assassination. Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. Palestinian resistance movement Hamas confirmed that the delegation headed by the head of the political committee, Ismail Haniyeh, is already in Cairo, the capital of Egypt, for ceasefire talks. This visit is estimated to follow a meeting between Iran and Qatar on Tuesday and is likely to lay the groundwork for talks on a new humanitarian truce and the release of Israeli hostages and Palestinian hostages. Egypt has confirmed a first meeting on Wednesday between the Palestinian delegation and its intelligence chief, General Abbas Kamel. This meeting is aimed at reviewing obstacles and conditions for requesting the new pause. In Palestine, while most of the member states of the United Nations are trying to reach a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, the Zionist army intensified its aggressions against the population of the Gaza Strip. On the 75th day of the Israeli genocidal operation, the health authorities in the Palestinian enclave confirmed 19,650 dead, 70% of them women and children, and the number of wounded is close to 53,000. In turn, the authorities in Gaza warned that these numbers could increase considerably in the coming hours, considering that the occupation has bombed the center, south, and north of the Strip in the last hours. The Malaysian government decided to ban immediately the entry of Israeli ships into the country in solidarity with the Palestinian cause. The Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim assured that the measure responds to the fact that Israel is committing massacres and brutality against the Palestinian people. The Malaysian executive decision also implies the prohibition for any ship en route to Israel to load goods at Malaysian ports. The restrictions come into force immediately. The Southeast Asian nation thus joins the list of countries imposing economic sanctions on Benjamin Netanyahu's government for crimes against humanity. The U.S. Senate closes 2023 warns no more aid for Ukraine for now. The President Joseph Biden had guaranteed the resources to his counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky during his most recent visit to Washington. The Democratic and Republican leaders of the U.S. Senate confirmed the decision on Tuesday that Washington will not be able to approve new aid to Ukraine before the end of the year, as the two sides continue to search for a compromise. They say they will continue to work in good faith to finalize their agreement. Both Chuck Schumer, leader of the Democrats, and Mitch McConnell, leader of the Republicans, agreed that there are priority domestic commitments. Since October, many warned that the spigot for Kiev was going to be turned off.
OMB Director Shalonda Young said there's no magic pot of money here. I mean, that's why we need this supplemental. That's why we need this funding to support Ukraine going forward. And like I said, we got one more crack at this here before the end of the year, before that replenishment authority runs out.
Russian President Vladimir Putin assured that his country is the sole guarantor of the sovereignty and integrity of Ukraine. The head of state made these statements during his speech at an enlarged meeting of the board of directors of the nation's defense ministry. The Russian leader emphasized that the West saw that it was impossible to achieve its goals by legal means, since Russia was working with the Southeast, so it decided to stage a coup d'etat. The president pointed out that after the separation from the Soviet Union, it was only Moscow that defended the integrity of the Ukrainian territory. However, he stressed that if they do not want to receive Russian help, he will respect the decision of Kiev. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday inspected modern weapons at an exhibition in Moscow and awarded medals to soldiers taking part in the special military operation in Ukraine. Russian Defense Chief Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov guided Putin through the display at the Defense Ministry, showcasing the state-of-the-art weapons of the Russian army, including drones armed with explosives and various rifles and military vehicles. Putin also awarded soldiers with a Golden Star medals, praising their courage. Putin stated, "I know your attitude and the attitude of other soldiers and commanders, and therefore I'm confident that we will achieve our goals securely, protect our people, the sovereignty and security of our homeland." We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. We make contact once more with Dan Sha, Professor of Latin American and Caribbean Studies at the City University of New York. Welcome to From the South, Danny.
Thank you, Luis. Good to be here.
It's always our pleasure. Danny, how can we describe what has happened today for Venezuelan peoples of the world that for 3 years have fought without rest for the freedom of Alex Saab?
Yeah, for the first time in 75 or 76 days, anti-imperialist people, freedom-loving people in the world can have at least a small smile on their face that Alex Saab, a political prisoner of empire for over 4 years, is finally free. The U.S. government under Obama, under Trump, under Biden has done everything, the U.S. government to undermine Venezuela and its sovereignty and to kidnap one of its diplomats in Cape Verde. Then the long, arduous journey. Alex Saab was a prisoner in Miami, in one of the epicenters of reactionary anti-Venezuelan, anti-Cuban, anti-Sandinista thought, and to have Alex back home where he should be, with the Noche Buena, with Christmas right around the corner. This is a beautiful thing. Of course, our hearts are still deeply hurt on the 75th day of a genocide against the Palestinian people. But as I said, at least there's some sense of justice, some sense of joy. The global class struggle pushes forth, but we have one of our deeply beloved brothers back home where he should be, with his wife, with his family in Caracas.
Professor, how can we analyze this victory of Venezuela's diplomacy of peace with a government that has tried, as you were saying just a moment ago, by all means to destroy Venezuela? In the last chapter, they tried to discredit Venezuela, you could say, through a political trial against one of his diplomats, violating international conventions because Saab was fulfilling diplomatic function at the time of his arrest.
Perseverance, persistence. How many people with his wife Camila and his whole team and Roy and everybody fought and fought and fought around the world and understood that Alex Saab's cause was the cause of humanity, of the 1/3 of the world's people who wake up every day under U.S. Sanctions, the Iranian people and the people of Zimbabwe and Cuba and Venezuela and China and in Russia. Alex's freedom is emblematic of this multipolar world that we're all fighting for, even though the unipolar hegemonic U.S. model with its military extension, Israel, is dominating the situation, carrying out this Holocaust against the people of Gaza. This was really a victory because of the persistence. How many marches across the world? It was an informational war. It's really David versus Goliath, where we do our best to get the word out, but all the censorship on Twitter, all the censorship in the mainstream media, they did everything to vilify, or as they say in Spanish, satanizar, to satanize Alex Saab. But it's good to have enemies, because when they attack us like that, it means that they feel the impact of Alex's diplomatic work. And what was his crime? His crime was trying to beat a criminal unilateral blockade that the United Nations, that no international organism has ever approved of. So finally, after 4 long years, justice has been served.
Can we see this victory of Venezuelan diplomacy as a show of strength and unity of Venezuelans in the face of the unending sanctions and blockades policies of the U.S. that you were just referring to?
Well, U.S. imperialism, even though they have received 2 of their mercenaries, 2 of their terrorists who invaded Caracas, they invaded Venezuela, they were true criminals. They were true mercenaries sent by empire. So the prisoner exchange is very interesting from that perspective. Alex Saab was not a criminal. He was a diplomat. But hey, if this was the way that the canje or the prisoner exchange had to go down, we'll take it. The Bolivarian leadership was extremely persistent and strategic. Now, the U.S. government is not going to give up. We have to continue to monitor very closely the U.S. Southern Command that is trying to weaponize Guyanese nationalism. They're trying to tap into the psychology of the Guyanese people and tell them that Venezuela is their enemy. We hope that cooler heads, cooler anti-imperialist heads continue to prevail so that the Venezuelan leadership and the Guyanese leadership can figure this out on their own as 2 sovereign countries. They don't need Laura Richardson from the Southern Command. They don't need ExxonMobil to be in the middle of their business. And that's the spirit of Alex Saab, and that's the spirit of people's diplomacy.
Dana, you were referring to different geopolitical situations that are happening right now in the world. You were referring to the situation in Palestine, the Israeli genocide. In terms of geopolitics, how does this move impacts the region and the world?
Well, there's many different connections. Of course, the world's people stand with Palestine, but here in the belly of the beast, it's an informational war. It's an Islamophobic, or what Professor Edward Said called Orientalism. The anti-Arab racism is very thick. All of the headlines here are anti-Palestinian. They try to accuse every Palestinian, including the 1.1 million children of Gaza, many of whom can no longer breathe. It's a starvation campaign. It's a dehydration campaign. So it's very clear where the world's people stand. But the U.S., through the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, and Joe Biden, they continue with their genocidal diplomacy, giving the green light to the Israelis. It's really only the world's people that can stop this, because the U.S. and their military extension in the Middle East, Israel, are not going to stop. This is the 75th day of the 75th year of a Holocaust against Palestinian nationhood that has consumed how many lives? This is one of the greatest crimes we've seen of this century, of the past century. And all the Palestinians are asking for is self-determination, like all peoples in the world. But we see that when we persevere, we can usher in justice. And this was victory today for the anti-imperialist people of the world.
As always, Professor, thank you for your time hearing from the South.
Thank you, Luis.
No, it was always our pleasure. Well, like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.